Welcome back, deep divers. Before we get too far, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
Okay.
So today we are going to be looking at a very interesting connection. I think it's going to be pretty surprising to a lot of you. We're going to be talking about the connection between the occult and the birth of modern science.
Yeah.
You might be thinking, wait, what? The occult?
Right.
Like magic and stuff. And yeah, you're right, but it's more than just spells and potions and, that kind of stuff. We're really diving specifically into a system of thought known as Hermeticism. And Hermeticism is this philosophical and spiritual system with roots in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
Cool, right? So get ready to uncover how this seemingly mystical system influenced some of the greatest scientific minds in history.
Yeah.
It's going to be a wild ride.
It is a connection I think that's very often overlooked, but once you start to see it, it's really quite fascinating.
Right. It completely challenges our usual separation of science and magic.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin? Where do we begin with Hermeticism? What are we even talking about here?
Well, the name comes from Hermes Trismegistus, this mysterious figure who is often depicted as a kind of a fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth.
Okay.
Now, these texts that are attributed to him, known as the Hermetica, are believed to have been written much later, probably during the period of Greek and Roman influence in Egypt. However, they're thought to contain echoes of a much older tradition, possibly even from the ancient Egyptian priesthood in the city of Heliopolis, which is known for its sun worship.
So we're talking about some ancient wisdom passed down through these texts. So what were some of the core beliefs? I mean, what made Hermeticism so influential?
Well, one of the most fundamental tenets of Hermeticism is this idea of the interconnectedness of all things. It's this concept that the universe is a living organism and that everything within it is connected in this vast, intricate web. Hermeticists also believed in a divine spark within humans, kind of a reflection of the divine in each of us. And they also believed that humans could achieve a kind of godhood through knowledge, something they called gnosis.
Godhood through knowledge. That's a pretty heady concept, pretty different from how we think about knowledge today.
That's right.
How did this Hermetic worldview actually influence the development of science? I mean, were they just sitting around contemplating the interconnectedness of everything?
Well, it wasn't just about contemplation. Hermeticism also encouraged this deep engagement with the natural world. Figures like Cornelius Agrippa championed this idea of natural magic.
Okay, natural magic. That sounds a little less spooky than, conjuring demons and whatnot.
Right. What did that involve? Exactly. Natural magic was about working with the forces of nature, understanding them, and even manipulating them. It was about observing, experimenting, and trying to uncover the hidden workings of the universe. And this emphasis on understanding the natural world through observation and experimentation would prove to be a crucial stepping stone toward the scientific method.
So these Renaissance thinkers, inspired by Hermeticism, were starting to look at the world in a new way, questioning the old assumptions and looking for answers in the natural world itself. How did this play out in the big scientific breakthroughs of the time, like the Copernican revolution?
That's where it gets really interesting. Nicholas Copernicus, the astronomer who proposed the heliocentric model of the solar system, placing the sun at the center, actually cited Hermes Trismegistus and the Hermetica in his writings.
So he was suggesting that the idea of a sun-centered solar system wasn't entirely new, but had roots in this ancient Hermetic wisdom.
That's right. And this connection to Hermeticism made the debate over heliocentricity particularly intriguing to Hermeticists. They saw it as a potential validation of their ancient texts.
That makes sense. If your worldview suggests that the universe is filled with hidden meanings and connections,
Right.
finding scientific evidence that supports an idea found in ancient texts would be pretty exciting. And speaking of exciting, and maybe a little controversial, we have to talk about Giordano Bruno.
Ah, yes. Giordano Bruno.
A Dominican friar, a passionate Hermeticist, and definitely someone who wasn't afraid to push the boundaries.
To say the least. Bruno took Copernicus's ideas even further, proposing not just a sun-centered solar system, but an infinite universe teeming with life.
Right. That's a pretty huge leap from, simply rearranging the planets.
It was a radical idea for his time, and it got him into a lot of trouble. But it also shows just how deeply Hermeticism could influence scientific thought.
I mean, Bruno believed that the universe was a reflection of the divine. And if God was infinite, then the universe must be infinite as well. He was fascinated by ancient Egyptian religion, believing that it held the key to reforming Europe and achieving harmony. Bruno seemed to find prophecies and connections everywhere. He saw prophecy in the Hermetic text Asclepius about the return of the gods. and believed it applied to his own time. He even drew parallels between his own efforts and the life of Jesus.
His views on Christianity were definitely unorthodox, to put it mildly. He saw Jesus as a gifted magus, a practitioner of Hermetic arts. Bruno was a true visionary, but his radical ideas, both scientific and religious, ultimately led to his tragic end at the hands of the Inquisition.
It's a stark reminder of the dangers of challenging the status quo, especially in those times. But even though Bruno was silenced, his ideas, particularly his vision of an infinite universe, continued to resonate with other thinkers.
That's right. His work influenced figures like William Gilbert, who studied magnetism, and even William Harvey, who discovered the circulation of the blood. Harvey drew inspiration from a fellow Hermeticist, Robert Flood, who was himself influenced by Bruno. So you see this chain of intellectual influence, this lineage of Hermetic thought that continues to shape scientific inquiry.
It's amazing to think about how these seemingly disparate fields, magic, religion, and science, were all intertwined in this way. It really challenges our modern perspective on the history of science.
And this connection doesn't stop with figures like Bruno and Harvey. Even Galileo Galilei, who is considered the father of modern astronomy, was linked to individuals involved in Hermetic circles, like Tommaso Campanella and Gianvincenzo Pinelli.
So this Hermetic worldview was really pervasive. I mean, it wasn't just a fringe belief system, but something that was influencing the leading thinkers of the time.
Exactly. And perhaps the most surprising example of Hermetic influence is found in the work of Isaac Newton, often hailed as the greatest scientific genius of all time.
Wait, Isaac Newton, the guy who gave us the laws of motion and gravity. He was into Hermeticism.
It might come as a surprise, but Newton spent more time on alchemy and theology than on physics and mathematics. He was a dedicated Hermeticist who believed that studying the occult would unlock the secrets of the universe.
Wow, that totally changes our image of Newton as this purely rational scientific mind. It's like finding out Einstein was a secret astrologer.
It certainly challenges our assumptions about the history of science. John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist, actually called Newton the last of the magicians, bridging the world of magic and the age of reason. And what's even more fascinating is that for Newton, his groundbreaking work in physics, specifically his law of gravity, was directly inspired by his Hermetic beliefs.
So what we're seeing is that the separation between science and magic, between the rational and the mystical, wasn't always as clear-cut as we tend to think. Hermeticism, with its emphasis on the interconnectedness of the universe, the divine spark within humanity, and the potential for human consciousness to shape reality, played a significant role in shaping the scientific revolution.
It did. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore whether this Hermetic worldview might still have relevance to modern scientific thought. Get ready for some mind-bending concepts as we venture into the realms of quantum mechanics and cosmology.
Welcome back to the deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm still processing the fact that Isaac Newton was a serious Hermeticist. It really makes you wonder if there are any echoes of this Hermetic worldview in modern science.
It's a fascinating question, and one that has intrigued scientists and philosophers alike. While modern science has certainly moved away from the explicitly magical framework of Hermeticism, there are some striking parallels that emerge when we look at certain areas of modern physics like quantum mechanics and cosmology.
Okay, color me intrigued. Let's dive into some of these mind-bending parallels. Where do we see Hermetic ideas popping up in modern science?
Well, one of the most compelling examples is the anthropic principle, which has become a hot topic in cosmology. It's the observation that the universe appears extraordinarily fine-tuned for the existence of life.
So we're talking about the fact that the fundamental constants of physics, things like the strength of gravity, the
Yeah.
speed of light, the mass of an electron, all seem to be perfectly calibrated to allow for stars to form, planets to exist, and ultimately for life as we know it to arise. It's like the universe was designed with us in mind.
Exactly. And this apparent fine-tuning has raised some profound questions. Is it just a cosmic coincidence, a lucky roll of the dice, or does it suggest something more, some kind of underlying purpose or design?
Well, that's a pretty big question,
Yeah.
and one that has sparked a lot of debate.
It has.
Is this fine-tuning evidence of a cosmic architect, a divine intelligence tweaking the dials to get things just right? I can see why some scientists might be uncomfortable with that idea.
The design implication is definitely controversial, especially within the scientific community, which generally favors naturalistic explanations. But the anthropic principle poses a real challenge to those who seek to explain the universe without resorting to any kind of guiding principle or purpose.
So if not a cosmic designer, then what? How do scientists who are uncomfortable with a design argument explain this apparent fine-tuning?
One of the most popular alternatives is the multiverse theory. It proposes that our universe is just one of a vast, perhaps infinite number of universes, each with its own set of physical laws and constants.
So in this cosmic lottery, we just happen to be in the universe that got the winning ticket, the one where all the conditions for life are perfect. All the other universes might be lifeless voids or strange realms where the laws of physics are completely different.
Exactly. The multiverse theory essentially says that the apparent fine-tuning is just an illusion. With so many universes out there, it's statistically inevitable that some, like ours, would have the right conditions for life to emerge. It's a mind-boggling concept.
It definitely stretches the imagination. But if we can't observe these other universes, how can we know if the multiverse theory is even true? It seems a bit like replacing one mystery with another.
That's a valid point. The multiverse theory, at least for now, is a purely theoretical construct. We don't have any direct observational evidence to support it. It's one of the major criticisms leveled at the theory.
So we're left with this intriguing dilemma. Do we embrace the idea of a fine-tuned universe, possibly suggesting some kind of purpose or design? Or do we leap into the realm of the multiverse, a realm of infinite possibilities that we can't even observe? It seems like either way we're confronted with the limits of our current scientific understanding.
Absolutely. It highlights the limits of science, at least as we currently understand it. There are some questions that might simply be beyond our capacity to answer definitively.
But the fact that we're even asking these questions, that we're grappling with these profound mysteries, is pretty amazing in itself. It speaks to that human drive to understand the universe and our place in it. And speaking of big questions, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about another area where Hermetic ideas seem to resonate with modern science, the role of consciousness.
Hermeticism, as we've discussed, emphasizes the divine spark within humans. This idea that we are, in a sense, microcosms of the macrocosm, reflections of the divine. It suggests a deep connection between our inner world and the outer world.
So are we talking about the idea that our consciousness might actually influence reality? Is that what you're getting at? That's getting into some serious woo-woo territory.
It might sound that way, but there are actually some intriguing hints in that direction coming from, of all places, quantum mechanics.
Oh, here we go. Quantum mechanics, always a wild ride. What are we talking about specifically?
Well, one of the most famous and perplexing phenomena in quantum mechanics is the observer effect.
I've heard of this. It's the idea that the act of observing a quantum system actually influences the behavior of the system. It's like our consciousness is playing a role in shaping the very fabric of reality at the quantum level. That always seemed a little too spooky to me.
It's definitely one of the most mind-bending concepts in quantum mechanics, and it's still a subject of intense debate and interpretation.
So how does the observer effect actually work? And how does it connect to Hermeticism?
To understand the observer effect, we need to delve into the strange world of quantum superposition. In the quantum realm, particles don't exist in definite states until they are observed. Before observation, they exist in a superposition of multiple states simultaneously. It's only when we observe a particle that it collapses into a definite state.
Okay, so before we look, a particle is like a spinning coin, both heads and tails at the same time. And then when we observe it, it suddenly decides to be either heads or tails.
That's a good analogy. The act of observation, in a sense, forces the particle to choose a specific state. And what's even weirder is that the observer doesn't have to be a conscious human being. It could be any measuring device or even another particle interacting with the system.
So it's not our human consciousness that's causing the collapse, but the act of measurement itself. That's still pretty strange.
It is. And it raises profound questions about the role of the observer, whether conscious or not, in shaping reality. Some physicists, like the late John Archibald Wheeler, have even proposed the idea of a participatory universe.
A participatory universe. So it's not just that we're influencing things at the moment of observation, but that our observations or choices might be shaping the universe in a much more profound way, maybe even reaching back in time.
That was Wheeler's radical proposition. He argued that we are, in a sense, co-creating the universe through our observations and interactions. He even proposed the idea that conscious observers might be necessary for the universe to exist at all.
Wow. That's getting pretty close to the Hermetic idea of the universe as a thought of God, a reality shaped by consciousness.
It is. And while Wheeler's ideas remain controversial, they highlight the deep connections between modern physics and ancient mystical traditions like Hermeticism.
So what we're seeing is that while the magical framework of Hermeticism may have fallen out of favor in science, Some of its core ideas, particularly those about the interconnectedness of the universe and the role of consciousness, are finding a new expression in the most cutting-edge areas of scientific thought.
Exactly. It's as if we're coming full circle, rediscovering ancient wisdom through the lens of modern science.
This is all so mind-blowing. But what does it all mean? Why should we care about these echoes of Hermeticism in the 21st century? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into more deeply as we continue our deep dive into the potential relevance of Hermeticism for understanding not just the origins of science, but the nature of reality itself.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring the unexpected connections between Hermeticism, this ancient system of thought with roots in Egypt, and the birth of modern science. It's been a wild ride so far, from Renaissance magicians to quantum weirdness.
Right.
But where do we go from here? If modern physics is hinting at a universe shaped by consciousness, where does that leave us with this question of life itself?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? And as we delve into the origins of life, the emergence of consciousness, and the very nature of reality, we find even more intriguing echoes of that Hermetic worldview we've been discussing.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those deep waters. What can Hermeticism tell us about the mystery of life?
Well, remember that one of the central tenets of Hermeticism is the interconnectedness of all things. The idea that the universe is a living, breathing organism with all its parts intricately woven together.
Right, so instead of seeing life as just this random fluke, a cosmic accident, Hermeticism suggests it's somehow woven into the very fabric of the universe, that life is, in a sense, inevitable.
It's a perspective that's gaining traction even within the scientific community. We're finding that the building blocks of life, the organic molecules that make up DNA and other essential components of living cells, are not unique to Earth, but are actually quite common throughout the universe.
We're talking about organic molecules in interstellar dust clouds, in comets, even in meteorites raining down on us from space. It's like the universe is seeded with the potential for life.
Exactly. And this abundance of organic material suggests that the ingredients for life are readily available, that the emergence of life might be more of a cosmic imperative than a cosmic accident.
But even if the building blocks are, there isn't the assembly of those blocks into a living cell, still incredibly improbable. We were talking about this complex, self-replicating system that can harness energy and adapt to its environment. It seems like a series of random events of almost unimaginable complexity.
It's true that the leap from non-living matter to a living cell is one of the biggest mysteries in science. And while the prevailing theory of evolution emphasizes the role of random mutations and natural selection in shaping life, there are certain aspects of life that seem difficult, if not impossible, to explain through purely random processes.
I've always wondered about the origin of DNA itself, this incredible molecule that carries the blueprint for all life. It's hard to imagine something so complex and elegant arising simply by chance.
The origin of DNA is a major puzzle, and there's no definitive answer yet. And then there's the appearance of the eukaryotic cell, a more complex type of cell with nucleus and other organelles, which is essential for the development of multicellular organisms. The prevailing theory attributes this to a chance fusion of cells, a highly improbable event that, as far as we know, happened only once in the history of life on Earth.
And let's not forget about sex. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
But from a purely evolutionary perspective, it's very complex. And this seemingly inefficient way to reproduce, why would nature go to all that trouble?
The origin of sexual reproduction is another one of those evolutionary mysteries that have puzzled scientists for decades. The prevailing theory is that it arose from a chance fusion of cells infected with different viruses. Again, a highly improbable event that makes you wonder if maybe there's something more at play than just random chance.
It's like every time we zoom in on the origins of life, these key transitions, these seemingly impossible leaps, we find ourselves confronted with events that defy easy explanations.
It does make you wonder if maybe there's something more at work here, some guiding principle, some inherent drive towards complexity and consciousness that we haven't fully grasped yet.
So we're back to the idea of a cosmic designer, a divine intelligence orchestrating the evolution of life.
I wouldn't necessarily jump to that conclusion, but I do think the evidence suggests that life might be more than just a random product of chance and necessity. Perhaps it's time to expand our scientific framework to incorporate new ways of thinking that can account for the interconnectedness, the purposefulness that we see in the universe and in life itself.
Maybe we need to rediscover some of those ancient insights, those Hermetic principles that recognize the deep interconnectedness of all things, the inherent intelligence of the cosmos. The potential for consciousness to shape reality. It's like science is catching up with ancient wisdom.
It's an exciting time to be exploring these big questions as the boundaries between science and spirituality, between the material and the mystical, become increasingly blurred.
So after this deep dive into the occult origins of science, what are the main takeaways for our listeners? What do you hope they'll walk away with?
I think the most important message is that the universe is far more mysterious and wondrous than we often give it credit for. Hermeticism, with its emphasis on interconnectedness, on the divine spark within humanity, on the potential for human consciousness to shape reality, offers us a framework for understanding the universe that is both ancient and surprisingly relevant to modern scientific thought.
It encourages us to see ourselves not as separate from the cosmos, but as integral parts of this vast interconnected web of life and consciousness, and to recognize that we might play a more active role in shaping reality than we realize.
Exactly. It invites us to approach the mysteries of the universe with a sense of wonder and awe, to acknowledge the limits of our current understanding, and to remain open to new ways of knowing.
It's been an incredible journey. We've covered so much ground, from ancient Egypt to the frontiers of modern physics. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on the universe and my place within it.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I hope this deep dive has inspired you to continue exploring these ideas, to delve deeper into the mysteries of the cosmos, and to embrace the wonder and mystery of it all.
It certainly has. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning of a much longer journey of discovery. Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the occult origins of science. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive, where we'll continue our exploration of the most fascinating and mind-expanding ideas out there.